Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Of course, we are live on WLAE-TV and we're also live streaming on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. So those of you that are out and about, you want to catch us on the YouTube, you can do that as well. Of course, today we'll talk about a lot about the draft, which is next week. And one of the favorite guests that we have on this program, everybody asking for him, Mike Detillier joins us. And of course, this is this year's copy of the Mike Detillier Draft Report. Mike, how are you, bud?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Looks beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Another great looking book. And how many years now?
It's 36.
36 years.
My 36th year. And, you know, listen, it's challenging to do it, and because it's time consuming.
Yes.
To put all that together, and, you know, you have to edit it. You know, I can't send out an 800-page draft book. I got to get it to 200, 210, somewhere in that range. And for the first time this year, I had an event happen that has never happened, and that's delay in delivery.
Right.
And it's not the local postal systems here in Louisiana. They do a fantastic job. Once it gets to that terminal, I've got over 12 dozen draft books sitting in a terminal in New Orleans that has not moved for over 2 weeks. You know, my thing about it is it's ridiculous, and I'm fortunate it's the first time it's ever happened to me. And you're going to lose some books, but how can you lose 150 books in a terminal?
That's pretty hard.
Okay, but I've had other people tell me horror stories about it. And so we have sold out, and certainly that's part of it. But man, it's more frustration that this is what you know you're dealing with, and no accountability, and no one to go to say, hey, okay, 150 books for me is not in a little small square.
Right.
You know, you're somewhere there, and no one can give you rhyme, reason, whatever. But other than that, everything's great.
Right.
And it was different this year because other than the individual workouts on campus, but I never paid a lot of attention to that. I think that gets overblown.
Okay.
My thing is, I'm worried about how you play on the field.
Right.
And I told you this story before. This is 87, 88. And we're doing a television show, and we're waiting on a certain Saints quarterback at that time who's periodically late. And Jim Finks tells me, so listen, I'm going to give you the best advice you can always get. Don't fall in love with the athlete. Fall in love with the football player. The athlete gets you fired. The football player wins for you. And there are certain variables you want in a player, but that production and what they do out on the field means a lot. No, it's great you can work out well.
Yes.
And man, you see some of these times and all, it's like they're training for the Olympics. You see some of these guys.
Yeah.
And so
Training just for speed, right?
Right, training for speed. And okay, I can't get a 4.7 guy to run 4.3. Okay, if you're not fast before, I ain't making you fast. That's like saying somebody can make you and I become fast today. No, that's just not going to happen. But if you're a guy that's a 4.4 guy and I can clip a couple of clips off of there, I've made you some money. And so, but does that tell you anything about the football player? It just tells you he knows how to train for speed. And so I think you can get caught up in that. And a lot of times coaches do. Because they're not watching a game on a Saturday afternoon. They're not watching on Thursday night or Friday night game. You know, they got their own gig.
They're preparing
for their NFL season or their college season they're preparing for. They're not watching Brigham Young. They're not watching LSU. They're not watching Auburn, whatever. And so you can get caught up with it, Eric. And the biggest mistakes I've ever made have been off athletes. Yeah. So I've learned now to adjust that the athletic ability has got to meet production.
Production on the field.
Now, every once in a while, you'll see a guy get picked off of that dreaded word, potential. Okay, he's got all the variables. Can I get him better? But think about it. How many guys in this world, NFL-wise, and there are always exceptions to the rule, who were not productive college players that became productive pro players? Very few.
Rare.
You know, it's not something that, oh, well, you know, I was a half decent player and then I became a star. You know, most of those guys were productive then and they're productive now. And you can get caught up in the numbers.
Mike, I get this question all the time. How did you start this? Why did you start this? Give us the genesis of the Mike Detillier draft report.
God bless her. My mom would always tell people this. She didn't do, I think she might have done one interview in her life. She didn't want to, that's you, I ain't bothering with that. She was like, Mike could have done this when he was 11 or 12. She said it's just a gift he had, that he could tell you that guy can play, that guy can't play. And so, you know, from that and growing up in a family that a lot of sports around it. So that's probably the ground level to it. And then I can tell you who really helped me out tremendously, and that's Don Landry, the former basketball coach, athletic director at Nicholls State, who was a draftnik. Man, he loved the draft. And he helped me out quite a bit and sort of giving me advice on sort of how to do it, where to go with it, that sort of thing. And Don Klosterman. Don was the chief scout for the Kansas City Chiefs in the 60s. He was the GM of the Houston Oilers. Don went to the Rams, was GM there, went to the USFL, ran the Los Angeles Express. He was good friends with Joe Clark, who lived not far from me, and still does. And he helped me out a lot. And just sort of teaching you a little bit or giving you tips on how this is done. This is what I do. And I get so many guys, you know, they don't let them bring books like this in the draft room. But I'll get scouts tell me, hey, you know how you break it down? You got his like genetics and who recruited him and, you know, his college stats and the good and the bad. That's how we got to fill out our sheet when we do it. And Hokie was one of the first to tell me. Say, you know how you write that down on that book? That's exactly how I'm supposed to do it, but I don't do it like that. I don't do it like that. So that's sort of the origin with it. And, you know, having sort of that flamethrower at WWL to do it. That was a big part of it. And being able to do that. And also ESPN Radio when it first started out. Terry O'Neill, once he left the Saints and he had a weekly show. And Terry told the people at ESPN, get him on. You know, get him on. So he got sick one night. He couldn't do it. So he calls me up, hey, you got to fill in for me with Valvana. was like, okay. And he said, talk draft. He said, he's a basketball guy, but, he knows enough about it.
Bob Vilvana, right?
Bob.
Right.
And so did it with him. And so those two elements came into play, certainly with WWL and then with ESPN Radio, where you got a big audience there. And so that's sort of the deal with it. And 36 years later, here I'm here.
Right. And of course, it's a go-to draft guide for so many. And look, you probably won't admit it, but there's a lot of scouts out there that are checking out as well, right?
Yeah, a lot of them say, no, don't send it.
Right.
Don't send it to the office.
Right.
Send it to my house.
Right.
So they give me a home address to send it to. And I get it. And, that doesn't bother me. And I've had a couple opportunities, if I'd have wanted to, to get in it. And Bobby always says this. You didn't want to take a pay cut. You're making too much money. You can't be no scout. You live in large. Right. So but
it is time consuming for you.
Oh yeah, it is. It is time.
I mean, this is in a year. How much time do you think you put into the book, getting it ready from
365? I would say probably 350 days.
Right. So at some point you're in your office.
4 o'clock in the morning.
You're working.
Either watching film, writing notes, that sort of things. And so, I'll probably take a couple weeks off, but it's probably 350 days out the year. I'm spending some time doing it and preparing for the next year.
Yes.
Because a lot of times in January or late December, I'm going to speculate. Okay, I think that guy's coming out.
Yes.
So I'm watching him, and so I'm writing the report. Then he decides to stay. So I slip it into another file.
Right.
Because I know eventually I'll come back to him. I did it with Jabril Cox because I thought in January of last year or of 2020 that I really felt he was coming out early. And then I heard he's returning. And then 2 days later I heard he's returning, but he ain't returning to North Dakota State. And he ends up at LSU.
Yes. Buddy D, his influence, his help?
Buddy was like, I don't understand none of this, but you do a good job.
Right.
But Hap started it first with
Hap,
me.
it was right. It was Hap first, right?
Hap was first, and unless I give him full credit, Hap got me on. He was the first one to have me on. Bruce Weber out at Channel 2 in Baton Rouge had me on. I got introduced by a young baseball coach at LSU. He was just starting. Skip Bertman. Skip had just sort of gotten hard. Yeah. And so he's introducing me. I'm doing this show with Bruce. I'm like, well, okay, you think about that later. Skip hadn't won nothing. He had just sort of gotten the team off the ground level at that point. And so, but it was really Hap started, and then Hap passed away, and then Bruce Miller was always great with me. Bruce had one of the great lines. And we've known him for years and years, and grew up listening to him. Yes. Him and Wayne doing Tulane games. Right. And I don't know if that's a better
Wayne Mack.
Right. I don't know if there's a better the way they work together. So
they were
in sync with one another. And Bruce was the unemotional guy. He would just sort of call it as it went.
Pro.
Yeah. And Wayne was that hot wire,
dancing on the tables at Pat O'Brien's.
Tables. And so and I did a lot with Bruce, and then they hired Diliberto. Right. And I got the phone call about 2 days after they hired Buddy, and he was like, Mike, I don't know, man, 3 hours. What am I going to say for 3 hours? And Ro Brown and I kind of both said the exact same thing to him. Just tell your stories. And because 3 hours on the air, despite commercials, is a long time. And man, Buddy had them. I mean, he had stories. I mean, it was unbelievable. And you in the business too. A lot of this is your opinion and your thoughts. Sure. But what you want to do is also get somebody else. Gotcha. It's all about great guests too.
It is.
For them to give their opinions, their thoughts, and not everybody's going to think the same. True. Not everybody's going to think the same about stuff. So, but Buddy was tremendous influence, tremendous on me, and Listen, my dad and mom would have never called me on vacation unless something really went wrong.
Right.
That's beside the point to Diliberto. You know, I was like, hey, buddy, I'm on vacation somewhere. Okay, you can go back. Listen, I want to ask you about something. I'm looking at Arizona State, and, you know, and yeah, it was always a little bit of a gambling angle to it. And he was like, oh, okay. One more. And one of the funny lines, buddy went to Mass every morning. And, you know, you go to Mass early in the morning. It's a short Mass, 20, 25 minutes. And so one morning he's calling me up, and I can hear him unfolding the goal sheet, you know, because at that time,
yes.
man, that was
Bible.
that was it for him. And so, and then I can hear somebody talking to him, and I hear him say, Father, listen, I'm okay. I'm on the phone now. He said, the station wants me to go on to do an interview. So he said, I won't be too much longer. Oh, and I hear him, okay, buddy, that's no problem. I'll come back a little bit later and check on you. And so I told him, I said, buddy, why are you lying to the priest? Why don't you just tell him we're talking about gambling? He said, that's why I'm at church every morning. I mean, if you knew Buddy, right. That was typical Diliberto to the end. And yeah, so Buddy was great influence. And, you know, getting to work with Bob. Right. You know, Bobby's great. You know, right. He's opinionated. He's long-winded. Mm-hmm. He can talk. He cuts you off. And I'm used to it. I do TV with him, radio with him. We work great together.
Plus, you grew up together.
And man, to think about, I think about that often. Right. And I've talked more to Coach O about it than say with Bobby. But you know, Bobby grew up probably 15 minutes from me. But he grew up south of the Intercoastal Canal, which meant you go to South Lafourche. And Coach O was the exact same way. He grew up south of the Intercoastal. But we are all very close in age. I think about it that the guy that lived across the street from me for a long period of time was the horse jockey, Shane Sellers. Yeah. To think, all four of us, in that one little small part of the world. Right. And, you know, Shane's got some funny stories too, but Shane was a great jockey in the 80s, 90s. Then he got hurt early 2000s and nice training horses. Moved to Erath, and so when you look on Wikipedia, it's like Erath, Louisiana, and I forget, he tells me, hey Mike, I'm moving to the big city. I said, what city you moving? I thought it meant New Orleans or Baton Rouge, something like that. He said, no, Erath. I said, Erath? Dude, you blink your eyes, you're out of Erath. It's almost as small here as Matthews. Come on, dude. What you talking about? But, you know, it was unusual that, you know, the four of us in that little community, and we could include people like Clarence Verdun. Clarence grew up in Houma, 20 minutes away from us. Clarence, double digits in the National Football League.
I can perceive it.
Melvin Johnson, who was one of the unbelievable high school players in Louisiana, track star, goes to Colorado, is on the Kansas City Chiefs, and dies on the operating table, and that sort of thing. And, you know, Marty Chabert, who's been a state senator, representative, working for the government. We all sort of lived in one little piece of the world. Right. You know, and, you know, we didn't know, going to Thibodeau was a big thing. You know, back then, you know, it was a big thing. Going to New Orleans was something else. Yeah, it was, it's a crazy time. We talk about that a lot. We've come a long way. We like the Jeffersons, and we were moving on up, so to speak.
Yeah, you're right. I'll tell you what, let's take an early break. When we come back, we're going to jump into the draft. We'll talk about the Saints, obviously. We'll talk about the strength of this draft. We'll also touch on what's happening with LSU and Tulane in terms of their draftees, and, of course, some draftees around the state. Mike Detillier is with us. Of course, again, another edition of Mike Detillier's Draft Report. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest is Mike Detillier. This is his latest edition of his draft report, and we're going to jump into it right now. Mike, overall strength of this draft, let's talk about the offensive side first.
Receivers like last year, really strong. The difference is I thought last year's group had a faster group. This year's group looks to be taller, lengthier. More linemen in this draft class than I've seen the last 5 or 6. Because sometimes it's really strong maybe at guard, but not so much at tackle, or vice versa. You look across the board here, tackle, guard, center. They got numbers there that are better than any over the last 5 years. And it's just what's happening in this world. Tight ends. These 6'4", 6'5" guys playing that flex tight end. You got numbers at the tight end position. So that's the strength of this draft class. I think once you get past the first 5 quarterbacks, that is a noticeable drop off. And those 5 will go within the top 8, 9 picks. So it is what it is. It's quarterback world. Either you got one or you're looking for one. Running backs, they always, there's some numbers there. Man, to me, Najee's cut above. The best running back in this draft class. And then certainly Travis Etienne, and then the 2 North Carolina running backs who are really good, who alternated there. But, man, I look at the receiving core, offensive line, tight end. That's really good up front.
You talked about the 5 quarterbacks. Is there some sleeper quarterbacks out there that might come in the middle rounds that either can make a team or down the line could be starters in the NFL?
It's rare that you see. Man, and I hear people pumping this Davis Mills. Well, here's my deal. How many people watching college football watch Stanford and said, man, that Davis Mills, he's unbelievable, isn't he? Go ahead, nobody said that. Man, his agent working overtime to give all this information out. He's been hurt a lot. He has had games when he's clean, he throws the ball well. My thing is, how many times are you clean in the pocket? You're not. Kyle Trask, God bless him. Man, he's a great story. He's a big, rugged kid with a strong arm. He's accurate. But I think he got exposed at the end of the year. LSU came at him a little bit differently. LSU tried to blow up his launch pad in the middle. And then you saw him trying to move, and he couldn't get out of the way. I had a former coach tell me, what is Alabama doing playing against him? They're playing coverage. Somebody rush him. Didn't they watch the LSU game? He riddled them. They didn't get no pressure on him. Oklahoma did exactly what LSU did. They came after him off the edge, right up the middle. Go and pick on. He wasn't the same guy. So every year you can say that, man, there's a sleeper guy, but that's few and far between.
And there's no more, again, that with the small schools where there is a prospect there that you've uncovered that nobody else has seen. In today's world, everybody's seen him.
Like Trey Lance, everybody, a small college guy. All I know is that small college guy went through an undefeated season, did not throw an interception. I don't care who you're playing against. That's pretty difficult. And Trey's the guy, for me, of the quarterbacks, has the very biggest upside because you've only seen a 1 year and 1 game window. He played 1 game last year against Central Arkansas. And watching that game, I thought he pressed a little bit. I think he knew it was one game, man, I got to look good. And I thought he was a little bit off. But man, he's smart, he's accurate, he sets up well. He does not panic in the pocket when he throws the football. And I think that's a trait you have to have. The other part is he's got quick twitch memory skills. He saw it on film, and now I can equate it to the field, and I'm getting the ball out there to him. So I think, Trevor, I've known since he was probably 16 years old, tremendous prospect. I just hope they can protect him.
Right.
The same thing with Zach, who's not a real big guy at Brigham Young. Can the Jets protect him? So San Francisco holds all the cards at 3.
Yes.
And what goes there on a very talented football team that got a lot of injuries last year.
Yes, they did.
And part of that was Garoppolo. And he is an in-the-box quarterback. And I always have concerns about those type players because at the NFL, you're getting hit, and what that leads to an injury. What's happened to Garoppolo?
Yeah.
Injuries. And that's the biggest fear for me for Mac Jones. That's the biggest fear for me about him. He's a good athlete, but he's never been put under that super hard pressure.
Yeah.
Come on, Alabama really protected him well, and he had great receivers and a running game. I can just turn around and hand it to the big guy. Hey, Najee, take care of it. I never thought I'd see a season where once I watched Burrow, I was like, man, I'm not going to see this again. And I saw it again with Mac. I mean, he was terrific. How well that equates to the NFL with him. You better build the fort around him. You better build it. And what they do, they're going to catch you a couple different ways. It's not always about edge pressure. It's right up the middle.
Yep.
Can he move? Can he sidestep? And what does he do? Does he panic a little bit? And we've seen it with Garoppolo. There's a little bit of panic in his game when there's pressure because he's gotten hurt. And we talked about Trey, and Justin Fields, I think, has taken some hits unjustly.
Right.
Yesterday
was the epilepsy.
Yeah, and he wanted to get that out before some agent sprung that out 48 hours before the draft. And I don't blame him. He has been the target guy for quarterback agents to say, man, he can't play. And come on, what are you watching? And they say, well, he moves out of the pocket, he runs with the ball. He does, but he's a better pocket quarterback than he is on the move. You can't watch Ohio State and say that. But one person on a major station can say it. It gets picked up on the internet, and it's gospel to everyone. Gospel. So I'm interested to see what happens at 3. When I went to print, and I changed my first round because of it, I was told by a really good source that John Lynch really liked Trey Lance. And so that's what I went with.
Right.
Now, is it a split decision here? Because Shanahan's really more coached the Mac Jones type player.
Yes.
But to me, Trey has the bigger upside. And I have a guy that can bridge me. Okay? I can pick Trey, and if I'm the 49ers, I have Garoppolo to get me through a year. And it's almost like Kansas City having Alex Smith and handing it off to Mahomes.
Right. In this draft, the best quarterback you think, pro-style quarterback, the guy that's going to have the most success in the NFL?
I think it's Trey Lance.
Okay.
Only because I know where Trevor Lawrence and I know where Zach Wilson's going.
Okay.
Tell me the quarterbacks that have had success over the last 10 years in Jacksonville. With the Jets, all I know is, man, growing up, man, Joe Namath was bigger than life to me. Now he's doing RP commercials.
Right.
My thing about it is, that's the last guy that won anything for him. And so it's been a long gap. And you got to be able to put the resources in protecting him and giving him some help. And we've seen it in Jacksonville, and we've seen it with the Jets. They have not been able to do it. Just not.
Compare and contrast this quarterback crop with quarterback crops of the past. I've been doing this a long time. Where do you rank this?
It's probably in the middle.
Okay, so it's not a super strong class.
It's not a super,
and it's not a super weak class
either.
Right.
There's a lot of guys that are maybes. I watch Kellen Mond. We've all seen it.
Yeah.
He's erratic. I mean, you don't change that. in a quarterback. He's an erratic passer. And he's almost like a pitcher. Okay, you put the ball in his glove. Okay, kid, get out there and throw strikes. The first 3 or 4 pitches, you know if he's good or if he's not. You see those first couple passes. Man, well, what happened? This is on a bad LSU team. He couldn't put them away.
Right.
I think about it. Come on, that was a bad defense for LSU last year, and you couldn't put them away. Fortunately for him, he had Isaiah Spiller at running back.
Yeah.
He sort of put that away
for
A&M. But, man, I've seen it way too much with Mon, his erratic nature of he gets hot and cold. And sometimes during the game, he's hot and cold.
Right.
So you can understand why teams are trying to move up to get one of those 5.
Right.
Everybody else is guesswork.
About the defensive side of the ball, strength of the draft on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, it ain't defensive ends or defensive tackles.
Okay.
It's not that. You don't have enough defensive ends. This year's defensive tackle class is below average. You're only going to have one guy going around one, and that's Christian Barmore. And linebackers, it's the changing position of the football world. You got to be able to match up. You can't have that big 250-pound thumper in there. Okay, I see him out there, man, I get a back or a tight end on him, I'm whipping him, bad. And so there are just a handful of those guys. Micah Parsons didn't play this year. The last game I saw him play against Memphis, it was like he had twins out there. I think he had like 18 tackles, 4 tackles for losses, a sack, a fumble recovery. Michael Parsons and Patrick Surtain, to me, it's going to be close to see which one of the top defenders. But tell me another year that you didn't have a great pass rusher in the top 10.
That's what I was going to ask you, because
that's unusual.
We've talked, how many times on this program you brought it up, what positions are guys playing now?
They ain't playing that. Not playing that. I like Jalen Phillips a lot. Okay. Here's my issue with him picking him real early. And I think he'll be a first-round pick. The big question mark is where, and as a medical, most highly recruited defensive end in the country, coming out of California, goes to UCLA, just starting to hit his stride as a player, 3 concussions, quits football, hangs out for a little while, then he gets a medical clearance, comes back to Miami, has a great season. 10 years ago, the concussions, okay, he had them.
Right, no issue.
Today, it's a big issue. You got to take that chance, and you got to slide that folder over to the multi-billionaire owner.
There you go.
And say, hey, listen, this is who we really like. I think he's the best pure pass rusher of the group, but there's a medical there. So the linebacker position is questionable. There's a couple guys there, and again, Michael Parsons, Zaven Collins, who I think is a really good player. Right. I scouted him for a college team when he was in high school. He played quarterback. He was a punter, kicker, tight end, safety. Played a little bit of linebacker. He played the only thing he didn't do was collect tickets and sell soda pop. That's all he didn't do. He was a terrific player. And he's developed into a really good cover guy. And he can play inside and off the edge. But he played at Tulsa, okay? He's still going to be a first-round pick. But, I think he's more of a 20s guy. Jeremiah Owusu from Notre Dame. You walk up to him, you say, there's no way you're playing linebacker. He's 6'1.5", he's 218, 19 pounds. Okay, but that's what you want today, because he can match up. I can match up against a running back or a linebacker, coverage part of the game, tight end wise. He was good coming off the edge. He runs the field tremendously well, but he's undersized.
Yes.
But isn't that what you're seeing today?
Yeah.
Linebackers look more like strong safeties.
No doubt about it.
And strong safeties today, to me, look more like linebackers. I mean, it's sort of swung a little bit differently. And so that it's an interesting position today. If you can't cover, you can't play, you run out of downs. Safety's okay. I would say it's a below average year at safeties. Trevin Moehrig from TCU is really good. I think he's a future Pro Bowler at safety. He's really good, Trevin. Cornerbacks, there's a few more this year.
Right. Go a little more depth in that, because that's, again, a lot of Saints fans looking at that cornerback position. They need a plug-and-play player for the Saints. Talk about that position in depth, if you would.
Well, there are 4 guys there, a cut above. And you look at Patrick Surtain. We're getting old, man. I watched Patrick's dad play basketball at Edna Carr. They won a state championship He was really tremendous football player at Southern Miss with the Dolphins and Chiefs. So got the genetics. He's been coached well. You can see it. He's got the size, matchup skills. He's going to be a pick 9 to 13 in round 1. J.C. Horn.
Right.
Okay. I'll know his dad.
A lot of Saints fans want him.
With Joe.
That time helped him in his 40, right?
Time helped him. If that was any question mark, it maybe was exactly how fast he was. He was always physical. He's always had a little bit of a ball hawk in him.
Right.
He is grabby, okay? And they let you get away with some of that in college football. In the NFL, not going to happen.
Especially as a rookie.
Yeah, and he, listen, I think for even some veterans in this league, and I think Janoris Jenkins was like that.
Yes, he was.
Pull, tug a little bit until you call it. Then, okay, I'm going to see how close you call it, then I'll adjust my game to it. But JC, terrific cover cornerback, a big physical guy, long arm, that's what you want in that position. Caleb Fourley is the wild card. He would have been a guy that I think Surtain and then Fourley comes off the board. Now the medicals, because of the surgery on his back. Everybody says he's going to be fine. But man, you have back surgery this late, it's going to drop you. And what happens if he drops to 28?
Right.
And so that's going to be a medical call there. You watched him in 29. He was a terrific matchup cover corner. And he didn't give up squat, nothing. I mean, he was really good. And so I think he's a guy from teens to late 20s. It's going to be the medicals on Caleb and how you feel about that. And then Greg Newsome, the second from Northwestern. He is a guy. I wrote an article back in January. I had people say, "Who's Greg Newsome?" I don't know who Greg Newsome is. Now, I can't pick up, my cell or look on the internet. They don't have an article about Greg. So all of a sudden, it's like Columbus finding America. They found him all of a sudden. But he's only given up 1 touchdown in 2 years. Really good matchup corner. He's played off coverage, he's played man-to-man, he's played in zone, real smart guy. He's got size, recovery speed that you're looking for. He has had some injuries, but he's really good. So I think those 4 are going to go, 9 through 28. Now it's going to be the big question mark. Who's 5, 6, and 7? Everybody's got a different opinion on it. Is it Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky, who we saw in high school here? He had a short stay at LSU.
Right.
Got suspended for the bowl game, left the team. In 1 year, though, man, he's a big cover corner. He's got athletic skills, just kind of put that foot in the ground, get to the football. Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State, smaller cover cornerback, real quick, great instincts. How well he matches up against the bigger guys in this league. And then the 2 young men from Georgia, Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell. I think of all those guys, Tyson Campbell may have the most athletic skills of all of them, but it's not equated to how he's played, okay? And he's been picked on.
Right.
To me, he doesn't play with a lot of confidence in him. And either you have it or you don't at that position. Now, Eric Stokes can run. He's got great speed, and he's a good cover guy. So, man, we talked about what that's now bringing it to 8 or 9 corners. And then there's Aaron Robinson from Central Florida involved in that. Man, that's a lot of corners.
So you're talking about some pretty good depth at the corner position.
And Afidi from Syracuse, whose brother was in the league as a safety, he's a big matchup corner. Okay, now we get to 10. So you could see probably 10 corners go within the first 2 rounds. That's a lot of depth.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. If you play in the NFL, okay, what am I got to do now? Okay, this is 3, 4 wide receiver sets I got to match up.
Got to.
And I want to match up as well as I can size-wise. I think what hurts Asante a little bit. The other guys are pretty big cover corners. So you got some depth there. And it's an interesting year at the cornerback position because of that depth. But if you don't get them in the first 2 rounds, there's a little bit of a slide after that.
With that said, let's go back to linebacker for a moment. A lot of people talking about a kid from Tulsa. Saints. If the Saints can't get one of those top 4 cornerbacks,
we Blinken ought to pick him. He fits.
Right.
Okay.
So at that point, linebacker, you're thinking?
Yeah, because one, cornerback is number 1 on the need list.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
You
really need 2.
Yeah, no question. You need a veteran and you need a
yes,
rookie.
absolutely.
you're not paper thin there. I don't know if there's something thinner than paper, maybe air. But you're really, really thin there.
Right.
Because it's a spot where you can't hit the season without getting numbers. You got to be able to match up.
Right. And plus Lattimore with again, his
possible
off-the-field
suspension.
At least one game, you would think.
And Patrick Robinson, how much gasoline he got in the football tank?
Right.
You know, that's going to be a question mark. And people, PJ's really a better nickel safety than he is matched up against a 6'3".
So at least 2, right, Mike?
At least 2. And I would try to come out of this draft with 2.
2 young ones.
2 young ones, and then bring me a veteran.
Right, I agree.
I think that's where you got to go. But linebacker is also a need. Other than DeMario Davis, what do you have?
You have nothing.
You got question marks.
Young guys that, again, you have no
Zach
idea.
Bond, I don't know. Chase Hansen,
Right.
He's hurt a lot, but he's talented.
Caden Ellis.
Caden Ellis is another draft pick guy that looks more like a special teams backup.
Right.
Craig Robertson can play all, but he's at an age now. You need to upgrade that. Do you hope that, when Quan gets healthy, I can bring him back?
Right.
But can you count on Quan for 16 games?
Well, and not only that, it was a late injury as well when you talk about the Achilles. Now, I know they've done wonders in terms of again, getting guys back who've had Achilles injuries much quicker and being able to play.
That was a career killer.
There's no doubt.
At one time.
No doubt.
And talking to trainers and people, and working for Thibodeau Regional Medical Center, a lot of the trainers there and orthopedic surgeons there with Ortho LA and Thibodeau Regional, they all tell me, Mike, it's not the injury, certainly like when you grew up, or even of 10 years ago. That injury now, we get them off their feet, we can train them in water, we can get back that flexibility, you can get back that strength.
You saw with Sheldon
Rankins was another thing. Terrell Suggs came back from it really quickly. So you can see you can come back from that, but my thing is long term with Quan, will he stay healthy? Right. So linebacker becomes, corner is 1A and a strong 1A.
Yeah.
But the 1B, and it's not even a question, is linebacker.
Right.
But what happens if this occurs? What happens if the 4 corners are gone? Zaven Collins is gone.
Right.
Jeremiah Owusu's gone. Now where do you go with this?
Is it wide receiver?
Or do you say, you know what, guys, we haven't done this a lot. Let's trade this thing back.
Trade back.
Because you know what? The one difference with this team than maybe the last 3 years is you're not going to see as much veteran depth. So I want more picks. I want more picks because now I got to fill their spot with a younger player.
Yes.
That's minimum wage, football minimum wage.
True.
And so, a lot of people, just trade the picks up and move up in round 1 to get J.C. Horn. Okay, that's great, but what do you have to give up to get from 28 to 11 or 12?
Next year's picks, maybe.
Man, who wants to pick 28th?
Right.
If I'm picking 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, what people don't realize, we'll make that trade. Well, if you 10, 11, 12, 13, you've concentrated your draft in those 5, 6, 7 players.
Yeah.
Now you trading out of that and going to 28. Man, you better sweeten the pot up really good for that sort
This
of
is a glorified second-round pick. A high second round.
Correct. And that's the thing about trading up for a quarterback. Okay. If I'm a team picking in the top 8, do I want to pick 28?
No way.
And that may be the best pick I get. What if that quarterback works out for the Saints? That may be the best pick I get of all the first-round picks. So has the philosophy changed a little bit? I'd love to get a young quarterback. I get him on football minimum wage for at least 3 years, okay, at a cheap price. But picking that late, what's your chances of getting that? And, Tom Brady. Okay, Tom Brady. Okay, but how many Tom Bradys they have out there in this world? They don't have many. That happens. Drew Brees lasted into the second round because of his size.
Yes.
Other than that, he'd have been a first-round pick, too. Never forget Greg Williams tells this to Abear and I. He's like, worst mistake I ever made in my life. I'm in Buffalo. Man, he said, I'm banging the table. We got to pick Drew Brees. We got to pick Drew Brees. My GM says, nah, he's too small. He's too short. Doesn't have a real strong arm. Let's pass him. He's got to play in Buffalo at least 8 games. Yeah. And then we got to play in New England. We got to play in New York outside. He's not going to make it. Greg said, yeah. Drew Brees is still playing and I'm unemployed. You know, and he said, so, you know, those things do happen, but it's not the norm. Most of those players at that one position, they first-round pick guys.
Right.
You know, they first, and early now, real early first-round picks. And I heard somebody say, oh, well, next year's group isn't great. Oh, really? Take a look at that group. You don't think that kid at USC can play? JT Daniels at Georgia.
Right.
You don't think that kid can play? Sam Howell at North Carolina. Okay, I just named you off 3. All I'm telling you is next year you and I will do this show if we still breathing. And we're going to be talking about a similar situation with quarterbacks next year than it is this year. Exact same thing.
Defensive line, you mentioned, is a need, especially in the interior.
Yes.
With again losing some quality players.
Malcolm Brown, big loss.
Big loss, and Sheldon Rankins as well. Both guys. How does this draft look for those players? Where can you get quality players at that position? As far as again the interior defensive line.
Well, I wouldn't pick one in round 1 unless it was Barmore.
Okay.
So
is there depth there though?
That's some depth, but a lot of those guys are one of the two.
Okay.
They either can stop the run or they pass rushers.
Right.
You know, and so an intriguing guy is Aleem McKeel.
Okay.
From North Carolina State. Aleem, man, he's a former running back. He kind of grew out of that now. He's over 300 pounds. So McNeil is a really good athlete. Ryan Nielsen, having been at North Carolina State, has some pretty good intel on Aleem. He'd be an interesting player in round 2 because he's got a little bit of work to be done technically, but he brings you a little bit of push to pocket. But a lot of these guys, they either are the pass rusher,
right,
or they're the run stuffer, and so you're not getting a lot either way on that deal. And you know the big run stuffers, a lot of them are nose guards. They fit right over the top of the nose. That's not what this defense does today. So it's going to be interesting to see the feel with Malcolm Brown, because I think he's a lot bigger guy to fill his moccasins than maybe what people are saying.
Yeah, I agree.
And he wasn't making a ton of money.
$5 million. Come on.
Today's game, come on.
Nothing. That's nothing.
And don't sell me about the young kids.
I don't want to hear it.
No, they're part of the rotation.
Right.
That's all great. But they're not starters in this
That's a
league.
huge loss. There's no other way. You cannot sugarcoat it. It is a huge loss for this team.
2 years ago, we had Louisiana Line Camp. I'm interviewing Ryan Nielsen. So we sit down and talk, and he said, don't ask me nothing about pass rushers right off the bat. Run stuffers. Ask me about how we play the run. Sure enough, bang, Malcolm Brown, Malcolm Brown, Malcolm Brown, Malcolm Brown. You know, and so I knew he had to respect that. And one thing with Ryan, he's always talked about that. If you can't stop the run in this league, you in big trouble.
It's the truth.
He said for all these analytical guys that want to break this down, passing this and that, he said, you know what it comes down to? Can I stop the run and can you run the football? He said, okay, you got to have a quarterback that can make the plays. You got to have them that can make the plays. But if I have the ability to run it when I need to and have to, and I'm physical with you, I'll wear you down. But if I can stop you, different story. I think what gets the biggest story of Super Bowl Sunday is the Chiefs couldn't run the ball word squat, nothing. And Tampa, give it to Fournette. And man, Big Lenny, he was hitting them. And he wore them down.
Sure.
Just wore them down. But the biggest story of this offseason, which has not really been covered to the extent I think it should, is how in God's name did you get 22 starters to return off a Super Bowl winning team? Eric, it's unprecedented. It has never happened before. Because those guys now, okay, I got the ring. I want to get paid.
I need my money.
I want my money. Tampa brings all those guys back. And it's almost like, okay, we know what we got. I'm interested to see how Bruce Arians handles this team. Just similar to what I told you a year ago, I'm interested to see how Ed Orgeron handles. You know, you win big, and man, you thinking big, and man, it's going to be easy. We're going to go right back to where we were, and okay? You were a hunting team. Now they hunting you.
Yes.
And the good thing is you get Brady back, who's not going to let them sit on their laurels.
Agreed.
But I think it's the craziest thing I've ever seen in the free agency world that you can return that many guys, all starters,
Yes.
and key guys that were backups on this football team.
Sure.
And so for the first time now in, say, 5 years, if you're doing the rankings, you ain't putting the Saints at the #1 spot in the NFC South.
No.
It's Tampa.
You can't. It is Tampa. This year, teams handicapped by no combine, individual workouts. The face-to-face interviews were on Zoom. How much does that affect teams? Were they a little bit more prepared for it because of what happened last year? Your thoughts?
Man, Joe Clark, who's in his 90s, he used to always tell me this. He doesn't live far from me. He's like, Mike, you know who it affects? The coaches who got chalk in their hand. They make those decisions. He said, they always, I'll pass it along to the general manager.
Right.
He's a financial guy, does a great job. We work great together. And if he wants to say I have the final say, so be it. But you know what? At the end, I do. He said a lot of these coaches got clout. What are they watching?
Film.
They watch a little bit of film, and it's their opinion. So it affects the coach who got great power.
Okay.
Especially in the early rounds, because I think most head coaches know who those top 100 players are.
And they have their bullpen.
And they got the little bullpen of players, and they have information from the scouts. But a lot of times, and we see it here in New Orleans. Okay, the scouting department hands you, okay, this is our scouting department deal, and you break it down this way. And then Mickey and Sean get together and say, okay, let's move this guy there. He fits us better. I like that guy. And so it's a mix now. You got to rely on your scouts, I think, more in the later rounds because they have eyeballed them. They have walked on that grass the same as that player.
Yes.
The early rounds, though, I think are dominated by the head coach. Look at the Patriots with Bill Belichick. He'll go down as one of the greatest coaches ever, and in our lifetime, the signature guy in the free agency era. Nobody's done it like Bill.
Yes.
Has there been a worse draft selector than Bill? He's bad.
Right.
He's won with veteran players.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And yes, they did get Brady. But who made that call? Was it Bill? Or was it the scout that said, hey, Bill, man, look, Brady's still up on the board.
It was a 6th-round pick. I mean, come on.
Okay, Gronkowski, a lot of injuries in college. He had a back injury. You get him in round 2. Because if he didn't have that, he'd have been a first-round pick. Okay, other than those two guys, okay, where is Bill hitting?
Well, he's hitting on a lot. He's getting a lot of LSU players, that's for sure.
At one time he did, especially when Nick was there.
Yes, they drafted a lot of LSU players.
So being a great coach sometimes doesn't make you the greatest talent evaluator. Now, sometimes you have both those skills. But I think it affects the coach who has immense power.
Okay.
Because now I haven't really been there to see him up close and personal. I can go to an individual workout, but that's all staged. It's like an act to do all this today. But for the scout who has watched them and seen them, you pretty much know. And listen, I can tell if a dude's fast or not. I don't need him to run on no track.
But you need to know if he can play football.
I want to know how well he can play football. But a lot of times you get caught up with numbers and speed and strength and how high he can jump. Sean makes this comment all the time, and I think it's a good one. You got to have a vision on how that player is going to fit with you. And I think it's a great line.
No, it's the truth.
You got to have that vision because, okay, I need a cornerback so bad, I'm willing to take a guy who's got a lot of flaws, but athletically he's through the roof. Okay, he's played this long and he's still got all those flaws. Now, I can chip a little bit here and there, but I can't rework it. And Saban always says it. When I was with the Dolphins, they were saying, oh, Nick, you can coach him up. Coach him up? How long has he been coached? He's been coaching high school and college. Now you want me to straighten him out? And so I think, Eric, to answer the question is basically, I think it affects more the coaches and the GMs who are also involved in this. And again, they're not watching LSU or Kentucky or Syracuse or USC on a Saturday afternoon.
Got about 2.5 minutes. Let's talk local. Let's talk state players. Talk about the crop coming out.
Unprecedented. You could have 3 receivers from the state of Louisiana going around one. It's unreal. You think about Jamar, and I wrote this in my book, and I've said it. He's the best wide receiver I've ever seen come out of LSU. He's better than Odell. He's better than Jarvis. He's better than Michael Clayton. Devontae Smith, hey, we grew up in the same time frame, okay? Lynn Swann. Lynn wasn't the biggest, fastest, strongest. His ability to catch the ball outside his body range, pop, pop. He makes a catch, jumps over the top of a guy, makes a catch. And he don't say nothing. If you know Devontae, he doesn't hardly speak at all.
Yes.
And then Terrace Marshall, the most highly recruited of the three, but he was injured. Got injured as a senior. First 2 years at LSU, stayed healthy last year. He was a bad man on that field.
Yes, indeed.
So you think about that, and there's a host of other guys, Stevenson and Coxey from East St. John who went to Memphis, DeJohn Dixon at Nicholls State, Racey McMath. We have become the wide receiver state over the last 5 years. I've said this before, 66 Division I receivers from the state of Louisiana.
It's amazing.
Signed college scholarships. And I'm not counting the Nicholls States and the Southeasterns. I'm talking about Division I schools. It's unreal. And Jabril Cox, who's not a Louisiana guy, but he went to LSU.
Right?
I think he'll be a mid to late second round pick. He fits the NFL because he can cover. Now, he's got to get better as an open field tackler.
Yes.
He's high. He's got to lower his body a little bit to make that tackle. So those are the guys early, and certainly Tulane has the tandem.
Right.
And how you use them.
Johnson and Sample?
Johnson and Sample as defensive ends or pass rush specialists. Johnson could be an outside linebacker in a 3-4. That's interesting. But I tell you the two guys that get more calls about than anybody else. Tyler Shelvin. Okay, and I'll worry about his weight.
Yes.
Long term, health-wise. But he's a big man in the middle. And Jacoby Stevens, what happens with him?
Right.
Because he's really built like a linebacker.
Yeah, he is.
He's built like a linebacker. So where do you play him? I don't want him deep in coverage. I want him closer to the line of scrimmage where he can play the run, rush the quarterback. Carrie Vincent Jr. is another player, interesting guy, similar to PJ in that he's played out wide, in the nickel, played the dime safety. So, again, a lot of players from the state of Louisiana. And David Moore, let me not leave him out, from Grambling, a center guard, really good one, made a lot of money going to the Senior Bowl. He showed, man, he's a really, really interesting player.
Right. Mike, book is sold out for folks that want it, but they can always catch you on WWL Radio, and of course also doing stuff for the home of Curry. Is that what it is?
Yes.
And of course on Saints Report as well, right?
Yeah, you just about click it, and I'm on it some kind of way. Some kind of way I'm there.
Radio, TV, all over the country as well. Mike, thanks
you,
as always
Appreciate
for joining us again. This year's edition of Mike Detillier's Draft Report. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, again, you can catch the rebroadcast of this show at 6 p.m. tonight on WLAE-TV. We're on The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2 at 10 p.m. On Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television. 10 o'clock, right back here on WLAE. Saturday at 2 a.m. on The Deuce. And then we finish up on Saturday afternoon at Pelican Sports Television at 5 p.m. You can always catch the program at ericasher.com, on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, and our social media platforms at Eric_Asher on Twitter and Eric Asher on Facebook. Catch me on the radio. It's Nash 106.1 FM, 4 to 6 weekdays. Also, you can listen live at ericasher.com. The podcast available on all the major podcasting platforms. Anchor is our base on all the major podcasting platforms. Special thanks to Mike Detillier. Always great to have Mike on the show. Fantastic book as always. And also to the great underwriters that support this program. Please support those underwriters. And to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy Fairley, Tommy O'Connor, Will Ingram, and my director, William Hill. For Mike Detillier, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.